she said, "You died when we were twins."
My son had memories that only his Uncle John could have known. He takes off running, stops at this tombstone and says, "This woman died in a bad car wreck."
You remember? The bad men came on the horses and we had to climb onto the roof to get away.
He said, "You see that man? That's the man who shot my Uncle John."
And he said, "Mom, it's me."
Someone falling off a roof and dying was just something I couldn't comprehend.
I just didn't know what to do. I just couldn't grasp why she was thinking about death.
I'm just hoping it's not too late.
Is she remembering a past life?
My name is Morgan. My son Braden is 7, and we live in Harrisburg, Arkansas. Harrisburg is just a small little town. There's 2 restaurants, 5 or 6 churches. It's old-fashioned, good community. I was 17 years old when I found out I was pregnant with Braden, my son. I was scared, but I had my family to support me. My grandma said from the start, "It's gonna be a boy." And I said, "Well, Grandma, we don't know that yet." And she went to every doctor's appointment with me. When I was 5 months pregnant, they told me I was having a girl. And my grandma was like, "Nope, she's having a boy." And I'm like, "Okay, Grandma." Well, the next month we went, they said that it was a boy, and that's what he was, a boy. When I got home with Braden, he would scream at the top of his lungs, crying all the time, like something was wrong, which we thought something was wrong with Braden until we took him to the doctor, but there was nothing wrong with him. It was very emotional for me because he'd cry with me, but every time I put him in my grandma's arms, he'd stop crying. My grandmother and Braden's connection was just automatic. They just bonded instantly.
My name is Nancy, and I'm Braden's great-grandmother. When Morgan had Braden, made me the happiest person in the world. He just stayed with me all the time. He didn't want to go home. We just have a special connection.
A couple of years later, he started to have the bad dreams.
My name is Kerry, and I'm Braden's uncle. Braden, he would get to screaming and hollering so loud. It would even scare me. I'm not the type of person you can scare.
Most of the time it happened at my grandmother's. We'd wake up and hear a noise, and it'd be Braden walking around with his eyes closed, but knew where he was going. Braden's sleepwalking was scary to us because we didn't know what was really going on.
He would walk over to the corner of the living room, maybe walk into the kitchen. That's when I would holler at him, and he'd wake up.
The only other person in our family who would do that would be his Uncle John.
John was really bad about walking in his sleep. If you got woke up at any time during the night, it was John. He was walking around.
When Braden was little, someone close to the family had died. So we went to the cemetery as a family to pay our respects. Braden had never been there before. He takes off running across the cemetery and stops at this tombstone and says, "Bless this woman's heart, bless her soul." And I said, "Son, what are you talking about?" He said, "This woman died in a bad car wreck." And I said, "Son, how do you know that?" He said, "Mama, I see circles around people's grave." My grandmother is from Fisher, Arkansas, and that was her friend, and she had died like 20 years earlier of a car wreck. I thought, how does he know these things? And then he kept doing it.
You went up to at least between 10 and 15 graves, and he'd tell them, who was in the grave, and how they died.
I couldn't believe what happened next.
My name is Brenda. My daughter's name is Michaela, and she's 11 years old. We live in Newcastle, in Australia. We have some of the best beaches in the world. You get a lot of tourists there, do a lot of surfing. It's a city, but it's like a big country town. Everyone's really laid back and people are really friendly and easygoing. It's a great place to live. I had a really good pregnancy with Michaela. She was my third child, so it went really fast. Everybody used to ask, oh, are you going for the boy? Because we already had 2 girls. I was like, no, I'm quite happy to have another girl, and I knew she would be a girl. I was elated when I held Michaela in my arms. She was really different to my other daughters. She was blonde. My other daughters were dark-haired. She had big blue eyes. She was just like a little angel. I thought Michaela was quite advanced as a toddler. She was 8.5 months old when she walked, and she was speaking. By the time she was 1, you could have a conversation with her. That surprised me.
My name's Robert, and Michaela is my daughter. She was beautiful when she was born. All my girls were, but Michaela was a little bit different to the others. And she did speak a lot more than the other girls. And words that at times were a little astounding to me, that where did she hear that? Like words that were unusual for a kid of her age to come up with.
Michaela was a real character. She used to love to dress up. She loved big gowns, and I remember one day we went to a vintage shop and she saw this dress and I thought it was hideous. It was an old dress with the big puffy sleeves, and she really wanted to get it, and it was only $5, so I bought it for her. She loved it. She used to wear it everywhere. From the age of 2.5, Michaela became very clingy and didn't want to let me out of her sight. She was quite happy to play with herself if she could hear me in the house somewhere. If she couldn't hear me, she would come looking for me. There were times when I just kind of wanted a little room, and when Rob would come home, I would say to him, okay, I'm just gonna go out for a couple of hours, you stay with the kids. And she was just at her dad, where's Mum? Where's Mum gone? Why isn't she back yet? When's she coming back? She became quite emotional.
Michaela's clinginess did affect us to a certain degree because at times, you know, I, being the father, I just wanted the girls to come out with me and give Mum a break, and it didn't always happen that way. If Mum left the house, she would just get upset.
I think it was at that point that I became a little bit frustrated with it all. I just couldn't pinpoint what was wrong with her. Also, she started to want to sleep in my bed with me, whereas she had slept in her bed prior to that age. And because her father was working away, I thought, in order to get a night's sleep, I will let her sleep in my bed. Michaela had these 2 dolls, and they went everywhere with her. She was in the bed, the 2 dolls were in the bed. If we went in the car, the 2 dolls came in the car, and they had to have a seatbelt on. She had lots of other dolls, but these 2 dolls were special. They were like little babies for her. They were her 2 little twins, and she called them her twins. That was just another thing I thought, oh, we don't know any twins. And I wondered how she knew what twins were.
I did find that was a little unusual.
When I was little, I do remember asking Mum why I wasn't a twin. And she said, because you weren't born a twin, you were born by yourself. And I remember her saying, I always thought I might have twins, but I didn't have twins. I never told Michaela that I had an interest in twins. I didn't even really remember until Michaela became twin obsessed. So then things escalated, and Michaela's behaviour went from cute to really worrying.
I lot of times, Braden would scream at the top of his lungs when he was a baby, like something was wrong. I couldn't get him to stop crying, but when Grandma held him, he'd stop crying. It made me feel I wasn't doing the right thing as a parent. And Braden had a sleepwalking problem. I couldn't believe what happened next. He just ran up to Uncle John's grave, fell to his knees and started crying. Braden hasn't never been to his Uncle John's grave, so how could he just run straight to that grave when there's hundreds? He ran straight to it and was like, this is where his body is, but not his soul, Mommy. He said, I dream about him every night. I feel like I'm him in my dreams. I said, son, you didn't even know your Uncle John. When I told him that, he just went crazy, hysterical on me. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I was there. I was there the night he got killed. Nobody had ever spoke a word of Uncle John, his death, or anything to Braden. Braden was not alive when his Uncle John was killed. That's what made it so strange when Braden started saying unusual things. John was killed by a gunshot wound to the chest. It took an hour and a half for the police to get a hold of my grandmother. We had to follow the air vac to Memphis, Tennessee. But before we could get there, the police stopped us. He told us to turn around and go back to Jonesboro, Arkansas. Well, we thought he was gonna be okay, but he was already gone. I was very close to my Uncle John. I loved him with all my heart. I thought of him like a father figure. My grandma was never right after that. I didn't know that anybody could feel so much pain.
And then one day, me and Braden, we were just sitting outside talking. Braden said, Mom. My other two children call me Mama. John called me Mom. Braden reached his little hand up, put it on my jaw, and he said, Mom, it's me. John would always put his hands on my face like that, always. It was not Braden's voice. I broke down.
And then one day, another thing happened. Braden said, don't you remember when I burnt my leg when I had that motorcycle accident?
I said, Braden, what are you talking about? He said, you don't remember when me and you got on the moped and rode around the block? When we come around that block, you didn't make the turn. You ran into the pine trees and I jumped off the back.
Uncle John had a motorcycle accident and burnt the side of his leg, not Braden. How did he know that? I don't know.
He'll swear up and down that he was on the back of that moped.
A week later, me and my grandma was laying on the bed with him, and he fell in between the bed and the wall. And I said, oops, you got a boo-boo now, don't you, son? He said, Uncle John got a boo-boo. Mama, he was murdered. He was shot in the back. Him didn't even know it was coming. That did not make sense. They went through trials saying that he was shot in the front. The guy that shot him got off with self-defense. First I thought, it's just impossible. Why would Braden be saying he was shot in the back?
My daughter, Michaela, would become really stressed and anxious if I wasn't around. She also had this peculiar way of playing with two dolls and calling them the twins. At first, I thought it was cute, but after a while, it started to become an obsession. It was just like, oh, for God's sake, get rid of the dolls. But it just wouldn't happen. That was only the beginning. Then another thing happened. She would just be happily playing. And then all of a sudden, she would start to get upset. And she would start to become very emotional. Just out of the blue, she would start crying. Nothing had happened. There was no reason for it. She would just get more and more emotional. till she was hysterically crying, clinging on to me. She would say, "Mummy, Mummy, I don't want you to die." I didn't know why she was saying it. This started to happen all the time. And I would just hug her and cuddle her, and I would say, "I'm not going to die, Michaela, I'm not going to die." And I would just continue to hug her, and she was just hysterical. Michaela wasn't an attention seeker where she would fake an injury and start crying or fall over and hurt herself a little bit and cry about it. She wasn't like that at all. She was a tough little cookie. When she cried the way that she did, saying, "Mummy, I don't want you to die," I became stressed. I became worried. How does she know about death? I just couldn't grasp why she was thinking about death, why she was talking about death. She wasn't exposed to any violence on TV or anywhere else. We hadn't had any deaths in the family, so I was just confused.
When she said that, I was a little bit concerned. I thought, what do you mean your mother would die? I found that a little disturbing.
When she had one of these episodes, it went on for at least 45 minutes to an hour until she was able to let go of me and go on with her day. It was heartbreaking to not know what to say. And of course, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, God, I hope I don't die. I hope I don't get some horrible disease and die. I don't know why this child is thinking that I'm going to die, but all I can do is tell her that I'm not going to die. The rest of the day, she would be fine. After a while, I sort of knew when it was going to happen. And she would be playing, and you could almost see her stop, and it was like you could see her start to think, and then she would start crying and say the same thing again, "Mummy, Mummy, I don't want you to die." I didn't really ask anybody for advice. I just kind of kept it to myself because I was concerned. I really didn't know if Michaela had some sort of mental issue. I thought about consulting a doctor, but I decided against it because she was such a happy little girl in every other way. Content, happy, normal child, apart from these episodes that began to happen. After one of these episodes, I decided to ask her why she thought I was going to die. And she told me. I was so shocked, I didn't know what to do next.
My son Braden had trouble sleeping at night, and I was worried about his sleepwalking. Then he did something that really shocked us. Braden said that Uncle John was shot in the back. He said he was murdered, he was shot in the back. Him didn't even know it was coming. I couldn't believe it because we was very cautious about talking about Uncle John's death in front of Braden. The things he was telling us and what the police said and the police report said was totally different. During the investigation, they said that Uncle John was shot in the chest from the front. But Braden said the guy went towards him and stuck the gun to his back and shot him. How could he possibly know that?
Everybody in my family would tell me these things, and I'd just laugh it off until Braden comes up and says, "Oh, Carrie, do you remember the time that we had the cooler full of tadpoles?" I said, "I don't remember me and you getting no tadpoles." He said, "Yeah, you do. Remember we set them over by the sink in the red and white cooler." I said, Braden, we had never done that. Yes, we have. You know we have. You don't remember? And I got to sitting and thinking, I got it. That was me and John that done that. He swore up and down he was there. That's one story he had never had knowledge of.
Things got really scary when Braden started having detailed dreams about Uncle John's murder. And I didn't know how to answer to it or what to do about it or how to react to it. Braden said, Mommy, the night my Uncle John died, he had $5 and some change in his pocket, and he had a billfold, and it had his name on it in black magic marker. I didn't even know that until I asked my grandma. It was all true.
He said, I can show you the house Uncle John was killed in.
We went down the road, and he pointed that house out to us and everything.
He said, there's the house, but it was yellow, which it was.
That's when I started to think, could my son be experiencing a past life?
I believe that John came back as Braden. Now, I know Braden is my brother, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
There was just too many things going on that none of us could understand.
I am Southern Baptist. I am a firm believer in Jesus Christ. They don't teach you about reincarnation in Sunday school or in church. I thought past lives were crazy until I had my son, and I know it's not crazy now, and there is such thing. I asked questions to myself, my grandma did too. Is the killer still out there? It got me wondering if there is more to this story than we really know.
My daughter Michaela had become obsessed with these two dolls that she called the twins. She would have anxiety if she was apart from me, and eventually became convinced that I was going to die. One day when Michaela was 3 years old and she was crying and clinging onto me and saying the same thing, Mommy, I don't want you to die. I just said to her, Michaela, why do you think I'm going to die? Why? She stopped crying and she looked at me and she said, because you died when we were twins. And I was totally shocked. I was like, when we were twins? When were we twins? And she said, you know, you remember when we were twins, when we were two twins, and we lived in the big white house, and the bad men came on the horses, and we had to climb onto the roof to get away, and you fell off and died. Don't you remember? She said, don't you remember?
First time she mentioned it to me, it was gut-wrenching. Thinking of death and someone falling off a roof and dying was just something I couldn't comprehend. And I was seriously starting to worry about it all.
I wanted to ask her more. Then I thought, okay, this is the time to prod a little bit more. So I said to her, what happened? She just said the same thing. The bad men came on the horses, and we had to climb on the roof to hide from them, and you fell off and died. I asked her, what did we wear? And she said we wore long white dresses with puffy sleeves. I asked her about the house and she said it had stairs at the front and a veranda at the top. And there was something at the back of the house where we could get onto the roof, and we were to get on the roof if the bad men came. At that point, all sorts of things were going through my mind. I thought, wow, what is she talking about? She's 3 years old, only just 3 years old. She can't possibly make this up. I started to wonder, is she remembering a past life? I had never really thought too much about reincarnation. I thought it was an interesting subject, but I'd never had any reason to look into it or think about it too much until Michaela said what she said.
I am a skeptic to many things like that. I never believed in the ghosts and those sort of things. I never had an opportunity to even see something like that. I've heard people have, but myself never. Reincarnation, that's just something I no idea about. I never really looked into it.
I wasn't sure if this was reincarnation. All I knew was that I wanted my daughter to stop being afraid and scared that I was going to die. I just didn't know what to do. My daughter Michaela believes that her and I were twins in a past life. She said that bad men came on the horses, that we climbed on the roof, and I fell to my death. I really wanted to see if there was something out there that matched with Michaela's memories, so I began to do some research. I was thinking maybe this was like the Wild Wild West that she was talking about. You know, I was picturing bad men on horses. She said the land was dry, barren. When I really started to think about it a bit more, I thought maybe she's talking about Australia. Michaela had told me that in this life that we sold things from the big white house. And I started to think that maybe it was a type of inn. Because Australia is so big, back in the 1800s, there was a few of these little inns where people would stop over and they would stay overnight or have a meal, water the horses and things like that. And I began to think maybe Michaela was talking about something like this. I kept doing the research. I couldn't believe what I found next.
My son Braden had memories that only his Uncle John could have known. Uncle John was murdered 7 years before Braden was even born. At the age of 5, Braden started having dreams about what happened the night of the murder.
I went and got the box that the police had given us of John's stuff the night he died. I found his clothes. Well, I get the shirt. I noticed the front of it. It was just all blowed out, just like explosion, blasted. It was just shredded. I got to thinking, well, why is it shredded like that? He was shot in the front. And that's when I turned the shirt over. I got to looking for the hole and I found it. It was about as big as my pinky. And it had somebody drawed a perfect black mark around it. That's how close the gun was stuck to him. If it had been further back, any at all, that gunpowder would have. Braden said that John was shot in the back. There's no doubt in my mind, Braden knew what he was talking about. He was there. And then something else happened. Braden was with his aunt at a farm where this man was working. Braden, as soon as he saw him, he said, Annie, come here. And she thought something was wrong with him. She said, what is it, Braden? What's wrong? He got behind her and said, you see that man over there? That's the man who shot me. But the man they arrested wasn't the man that Braden described.
Did they arrest the wrong person?
That's when we were convinced that the story the authorities told us was not true.
We started to wonder if we could get the case reopened. So we decided to give all of the information Braden gave us to the authorities, but we haven't had a response yet. We all want justice for the man that lives in our hearts. Even if we can't get the case reopened, I need to find a way to find peace for my son, but I just hope it ain't too late. We've come to believe that my 7-year-old son was my Uncle John in his past life. We couldn't believe it when the man that Braden described as the killer was not the man that was arrested for my Uncle John's murder. It's been a rocky road for all of us with Braden. Very emotional.
My name is Braden and I'm 7 years old. I'm in the 2nd grade. Uncle John died across from a church where the high school is, and he died in a yellow house. I sleepwalk like John, I act bad like John, and how I know this is my dreams. John can go through me. I don't feel like him, but when he goes through me and stays in me, I feel like a ghost.
I feel like that John came back in Braden to let me know the story of what happened the night of his murder.
We're gonna go to the cemetery as a memorial to try to get peace with Uncle John and peace with Braden. We're gonna go as a family. I want Braden to be able to say goodbye and let go, and maybe he could find peace.
That's John's grave.
Right there?
Yes. Yeah.
God sent John back inside of you for what reason?
So he can tell me so I can tell the granny that he loves her and he misses her and
Just all kind of stuff.
And I thank you so much. Braden is the most wonderful gift that this family has ever received.
so he says he misses going fishing with you, misses spending time with you.
I miss going fishing with him too, Brady. I love that boy so much, I ain't funny. And I live for my family. I love you, son.
I love you.
Now Braden understands that the past is the past and we don't have to hang on to it anymore. But he could be a 7-year-old normal boy.
Patience is a virtue, son. I believe he's going to let go of the past life. That's very comforting for me. I believe with all my heart, he's starting to become bright. Swing it hard and let go.
My daughter Michaela believes that her and I were twins in a past life. She said we climbed on the roof and I fell to my death. When Michaela was a little older, we went through lots of different images. There was a house where she said, yes, it was very, very similar to that. And it was like an inn. And we went through some clothing and she picked out a few pictures and they were from the 1850s. And the little girls had like a very plain calico type dress and the bonnets. And she said, that's it, that's what we wore, that kind of thing. So I felt like I had narrowed it down. I felt like it was around the 1850s and we were getting close to something. So I started researching Australian history in the 1850s. I came across bushrangers. Bushrangers were Australian outlaws. They would go around and rob people, and some were a bit like Robin Hood. But there were also really bad bushrangers that didn't care who they hurt or who they stole from. I began to think that bushrangers could be responsible for what happened to us in our past life. I ended up contacting a historian and I gave him all the information from what Michaela had said. One of the problems is that so many of these sort of incidents happened with bushrangers in Australia in that era that there was no documentation. We might never find out who we were in that life, but the more research I do, the more I believe Michaela. I feel like it's okay. I've come to terms with it. I know my daughter had a past life memory. Basically, after Michaela got her memory out and was able to articulate it in the best way that she could as a 3-year-old, things became a lot better for her. Once she was able to talk about it without the tears and the emotion, it was a turning point for her. It was a definite turning point.
It eventually just started to fade away. I felt a lot more relieved, and I think my mother did too.
Michaela still has some residual emotions about it. She still has that little bit of fear, I think, in the back of her mind that I might go away someday and not come back. If she could get over that hurdle, I think her life would be a lot easier. I want my daughter to live a good life without this fear. I just hope it's not too late. My daughter Michaela remembers a past life where she and I were twin sisters. She told me that bad men came on horses, we climbed onto the roof, and I fell off and died trying to get away. The more research I do, the more I believe Michaela.
My name is Michaela and I'm 11 years old. I'm in 5th grade and I like doing athletics, art and sport. I remember from my past life that me and my mum were twins and some bad guys came. Me and my mum climbed onto the roof and my mum fell off the roof and died. When my mum goes away, I don't want her to because I feel like she won't come back. I don't want to feel sad and scared when she leaves.
I hope this hasn't had an emotional scar on her later down the track. I just wanted to be a normal child.
Hopes for my daughter are that she just has a great life. I just want her to have great experiences and be able to live her life without fear that she's going to lose the people that she loves. I plan on having a heart-to-heart with Michaela and letting her know that I'm never going to leave her. Even when I die, I will be with her again. She's never going to lose me, and I'm never going to lose her. I've got these little necklaces. I've got one for me and one for Michaela. It's a symbol of our connection. I want her to feel comforted by the necklace, and when we're apart, it will remind her that we're so connected and she doesn't have to worry. So I brought you down here today just to have a little talk with you because I know that you still have some fears and worries that I could die and we might get separated because of what happened in your past life. So I have something really special that I want to give you. And they're very special necklaces. They're exactly the same, one for you and one for me. And so if you're not with me at some time and you start to get worried about it, I want you to read the inscription on the necklace. So the inscription says, "Mothers and daughters never truly part, bound together in each other's heart." And that's kind of like us. It represents you and me because we're bound together in each other's heart. And we've been in a life before and we're together in this life. So I'm sure that we're going to be together again. I love you too. So how do you feel about that?
Safe.
Makes you feel safe? Like I said, we have been together before and we will be together again, won't we? Always.
When my mum's gone, I can touch the necklace and it will remind me of me and my mum. Yeah, I'm happy my mum is my mum in this life. I feel pretty good and relieved.
I think it went really good. I think that, you know, something like that will mean a lot to Michaela. And if there's ever a time when I'm not with her and she starts to have that fear, I hope that she will look at it and that it will help her. I think it's a step forward for Michaela. If Michaela's happy, I'm happy. So if she can let go of those fears and move on with her life, that makes me feel great. It's a step forward for all of us. What I've learned from this is that I just believe that there is life after death, and I believe that we have been together before and we will be together again, and I'm not afraid of death anymore. It doesn't scare me. Of course, I'm scared that, you know, I don't want anything to happen to my children or anything like that, but I do believe that we have a connection and we will be together always. I think we're here to learn different lessons, and maybe there's something I can teach her in this life, and there's definitely things I can learn from her in this life, and I already have learned so much from her.